What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Tuesday, March 20th, 2018. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. A lot is going on. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And you'll have to, excuse me, I'm a touch under the weather today, so I don't sound my normal self. But anyway, let's get on into it. Mike is in our control room ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Now, there has been yet another school shooting. This one had a different outcome. Now, the shooter was a 17-year-old, Austin Wyatt Rollins, and he shot and injured two students, a 14-year-old boy and a 16-year-old girl, who are being treated at hospitals. Only one death so far, and that's the shooter himself, because in this case, the school recess officer just walked right on in and engaged the shooter. That's what they're supposed to do, and it underscores the complete failure of law enforcement down there at Parkland, which is one of the reasons we think it was staged to support the gun grabbers. And this one, though, may be legit. The official story is that the shooter had been in a relationship with the girl, and I guess she dumped him, and we don't know if this kid was on prescription antidepressants, but he went postal. And so the school resource officer, Blaine Gaskill, basically went head-to-head with the shooter, Austin Rollins. They both fired simultaneously. Austin was a lousy shot, did not hit Blaine Gaskill. Blaine Gaskill, of course, struck and killed Rollins. So over and done with, not enough bloody shirts to really make a big deal about it. But while this one does look like there may have been a legitimate story here, it does seem timed conveniently for all these gun control bills that are coming on out. Now, over in Illinois, they've approved a bill, House Bill 1465, which requires 18 to 20-year-olds to hand over or transfer ownership of heretofore legally possessed assault weapons. I think that would qualify as ex post facto if somebody cared to mount a legal challenge. Now, the NRA and ILA describe these guns as commonly owned semi-automatic firearms. They're sport rifles. They're just modular, so you can reconfigure them to do what you want to do. They also have to turn in magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. The bill bans the sale of certain types of semi-automatic weapons to individuals under 21. Owning such a weapon by persons under age 21 is a Class 3 felony for a first offense and a Class 2 felony for a second offense. So they're out there just grabbing the guns as fast as they can. Now, one gun grabber group, Everytown, tweeted a link to a Newsweek article that had this racist message that we shouldn't arm teachers because teachers would then be more likely to shoot black and brown children, because minority children are more likely to be suspended or disciplined than white children. I mean, that's absolutely disgusting that they're out there saying that teachers, if they're armed, are just going to haul off and start shooting kids. And to illustrate this tweet, they had a hand holding a gun and another hand holding a magazine. And there at the top, you can see a bullet in the magazine, put into the magazine facing the wrong way. And this went wild on Twitter. Everybody's saying, these people are clueless. They don't know what they're talking about when they're talking about weapons. I think they all need to be run through a gun safety course. And by the way, speaking of gun safety, don't forget this promotional deal that we have with Front Sight Training Academy. If you make a one-time $500 donation to RBN, you will get a lifetime Commander membership. All kinds of great, wonderful benefits. If I lived in the American West, I'd go for this deal myself. So just something to keep in mind. All righty. as you know, the media just does a lot of attention on school shootings. Oh, it's the children, tug at your heartstrings. And apparently, this Michael Medved had as a producer Greg Tomlin, who did an actual survey and counted up in the years 2016 and 2017 at K through 12 schools in America, of the 51 million students enrolled, there were only 7 children killed. Now that's 7 human lives snuffed out, and it is a tragedy. But it's a lot less than what you see from the media coverage, which is misleadingly claimed there were 18 school shootings in January alone. And part of what they do is very dishonest. If there's a shooting just near a school, it's lumped in as a school shooting. They're trying to inflate the numbers to make it look like there's a crisis. The militant feminists did the same thing back in the 1990s, where they expanded the definition of rape so that they could run up the numbers and claim there was a rape crisis. But I'll tell you what a real crisis is. According to the Journal of Patient Safety, medical mistakes kill between 210,000 and 440,000 patients every single year. Where is the market hysteria over that? Because hundreds of thousands of people dying from medical mistakes is a far bigger problem than the few who are the victims of gun violence. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Down in South America, in Brazil, they've got very strict gun control, and crime is just off the top of the scale. 60,000 Brazilians are murdered every single year. And apparently there is a growing firestorm of protests calling for a repeal of Brazil's gun laws so that the civilian population can protect themselves. I think it's a very, very good idea. Now, apparently in Gardena, California, there was a student at Sierra High School who posted 2 social media posts this week threatening campus violence. And the police went over to his home and they confiscated his guns and ammunition. See, if the police actually are allowed to do their job, if they're not ordered to stand down, like happened in Parkland, they can protect our students. But of course, the gun grabbers don't want students protected. They want the guns grabbed. All right, we're going to take a phone call from Steve Elkins. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I've got the Orlando Sentinel in front of me here, and it says FBI agent. Widow said, I knew of plot. We're talking about the Pulse nightclub shooting. And I first read that, and I said to myself, why are we supposed to believe the FBI after understanding that memo of how they colluded with the DNC and Hillary Clinton, their backup plan to get rid of Donald Trump? And so I say to myself, why is anybody listening to anything the FBI says? And I'm looking forward to the day. I hope that sometime in the future here, not too soon, not too far off, that Donald Trump will say, show your cards, Mueller, show your cards. This is over, and I'm going to dissolve the FBI. It's over, because they have lost all credibility. They cannot be trusted, and they are part of the deep state as far as I'm concerned. If they decided to find a way to get rid of Donald Trump, they are part of the deep state. They need to go, dissolve the FBI, get rid of them, fire them all. And if you do another agency, certainly don't hire any of these people from the FBI. Start over from scratch. Well, the problem is the FBI has never been about law enforcement. And yes, in the early days, J. Edgar Hoover was out there, we're going to get the gangsters. And when they got Dillinger, he actually tried to take personal credit for it. But it was Melvin Purvis, I think, was the agent who actually shot Dillinger. So it's a lot of politics going on and a lot of blackmail. But more recently, the FBI has become the American version of the Gestapo, simply enforcing the will of whoever is in power. And I felt their wrath back in 1994 when I questioned the official story on Vince Foster. You can read about the FBI abuses during COINTELPRO back in the 1960s, targeting the anti-Vietnam War protesters, Native Americans, the early feminists,
trying to kick up racial tension to keep us divided and under control. And that's really what the FBI is all about. So I'm in agreement. I think this country would be better off without them.
Yes, I agree, and I hope he does it. I hope he does one of those Ronald Reagan, like he took on Patco, and he just basically he broke the back of Patco, the union. I'd like to see Donald Trump do the same thing and just said, "This is it. It's over. It's dissolved." And we certainly done what we got. What 17 intelligence agencies?
Yes.
I think that's far too many, and
I agree.
think the FBI has to go.
We really only need two. One for internal domestic, which is what the FBI is supposed to be doing. And Russia, the GRU does that. And then one for outside militarily related intelligence. That's what CIA does here in the U.S. and KGB does for Russia. But we don't need all these other little turf wars where they're up there grabbing resources, not communicating. That's the worst thing of all. And there's a hideous duplication of effort. We've been hearing about all this stuff that the NSA developed as cyber weapons and espionage tools, and then we find out CIA's been doing exactly the same thing. Wasting time and wasting money. It all needs to be under one roof and one management to make it more efficient. 17? That's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous.
Agreed. How much more time would you give Mueller on this whole witch hunt? How much more time would you give him?
Well, given the ferocity of the threats that we're hearing from Democrats, I think they're feeling like it could be imminent. Again, I'm not a mind reader, but it does feel like it's building to a peak.
Yeah, I'd say it has to come to an end. This is ridiculous. Over a year now, and they have nothing. So it's time to end it and save the money. I mean, this is costing a fortune, I'm sure.
Yes.
That's it. Hey, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. And getting on back to, we have more callers waiting on the line. Mike in Chicago, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
You made a good point about Brazil. I didn't know that they need to repeal their gun control laws, but Brazil, it can be just a terrible place. They have gangs. These little kids are running around, and because they banned the guns, I mean that they've been trying to get the security officers. You'll see that stuff on CCTV. You got these gangs that are running around, and all their guns, they just get them wherever they can. But I just think that because they ban the guns, it has something to do with it. And then what I wanted to say was they shoot. They kind of got their own laws over there, the gangs. And like if they catch another gang member stealing, here's the new thing. They'll shoot them through. They'll shoot them through the hands. I mean, this is just unbelievable. There's supposed to be a lot of passion behind that. But the worst is happening in Mexico, and probably like we were just talking about South America. But the Mexican, the drugs and the cartel. That's I don't even want to go there with you. But the thing is, when you start to see they want to disarm the public, that's just opening it up for the criminals to just do what they want and and when they want, and they know they're never going to get caught. And with Brazil, I think you just made a good point there when you said that. That's what came to mind. Now they have to repeal it, Anyway, so yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is about taking the guns away and opening the borders. Yeah, it's who's in control? You got to ask yourself. I mean, and then divided we fall. I mean, it just seems like they want to put everybody together and have everybody at war, and therefore then they could just do whatever they want, and we don't even have to have elections or anything anymore.
That's exactly what's going on here. And you need to understand that organized crime loves a gun ban because it creates a safe work environment for their prostitutes and their drug dealers and their second-story people and the rest of it. That's why I keep saying anti-gun is pro-crime, because inevitably, when you take guns away from the law-abiding citizen, crime goes up.
Right. Yeah. And one more thing. When you we have our Second Amendment here and all this, and people should be saying, "What do you mean? You want to, you're going to take my gun away?" Because they should know that now, they're just going to be open for all of this violence and all of this tyranny that you're talking about. But instead, they're somehow programmed by the major mass media to, everybody's a victim. Where, we need to give up all our guns, and everybody loves one another, and we need to welcome, people into our houses that we don't even know, and it's so beautiful, isn't it? We're just living in a paradise, It's just, I don't know, man. I think it's the fluoride in the water. I gotta go back and do some more research. I gotta find out when the fluoride started and where we're at today. It's like socialism and nationalism. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what you're describing there is your typical liberal fantasy world, where they want to dream of a better world, and then they want to live there, and they don't want to deal with the reality that they keep making these major mistakes. That they get very triggered if somebody comes up and says, this open border thing isn't working on out. Oh, you must be a racist. You must be a racist. No, I'm not a racist. Illegal is not a race. But they just cling to this ideology almost like a religion. And they've got to come back to the real world
I think
with the rest of us.
Feel good. It's a feel good. Lovey-dovey, feel good. Emotionally. I don't know. I don't know what it is, man. Yeah.
Well, it's also that spirit of belonging, of being part of something big, which is a very powerful allure for young people. That's where you get things like Jim Jones or Scientology or liberalism. Mike, you there? I think we lost Mike. All right, let's switch over to Neil in California. Aloha, Neil. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Claire, the United States of America, and I agree with you wholeheartedly that illegal is not a race, and illegal does not have any rights that an American citizen has.
Well, fortunately, the courts have just ruled on that very issue, saying that no, somebody who's inside the country illegally cannot avail themselves of rights that go to the citizens. So that legal precedent has been set, and it's going to carry forward. Basically, what it's going to come on down to is a mob movement, because there are so many of these illegals inside the country. We could literally see a civil war in the streets of America.
Okay, being I live in California, I read an article this morning that said literally with the Cal exit, like the Brexit and all the other things, that could be the start of the Civil War. You get your little city enclaves, followed by the, strong arm of the Democratic Party to push their agenda farther. But I wanted to say that the guy that said dissolve the FBI and fire Mueller and stuff like that's the exact opposite of what needs to happen. Let them keep going, because the more they keep going, the more they're having to clean their own house and admit to all the crimes that are actually happening. So the farther the investigation and all this goes, the more it uncovers more of the corruption from the other side. Now we're saying that Obama used the same tactic with the Facebook ad or collection of data before Trump. So, I mean, it doesn't matter what happens in what day. Trump did something bad. That's what the scenario is. And then this morning I'm watching CBS Morning News. I'm on over-the-air antenna, so I've got one channel. So,
okay, well, listen, Neil, got to put you on hold. We got to take a break for commercials.
Okay.
Don't hang up, and I'll come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're talking with Neil in California. And Neil, just pick up where you left off, please.
like I was saying, I heard it on the radio this morning about this shooting at a school. I'm in California. This is back east. So now I turn on the news, and it's just a blip on the news. Now the CBS morning show comes on after my local news, and it was the same thing. Just a blip on the news. They had to report it, and they never mentioned that the shooter was shot by a cop with a gun in the school. So this shooting completely contradicted everything that they've been pushing since Florida.
Yes.
And, what's happening on Saturday is their big push to, go keep doing it. This thing kind of completely shattered it because a good guy with a gun in a gun zone. It was a non-gun zone or non-free gun, whatever that crap is.
Gun-free zone.
So literally, exactly, a guy with a gun took out the shooter, which is exactly what should have happened in Florida, and that just makes him look disgraceful. And it's like, really? So you were all over a gun shooting, somebody with guns, illegal guns, get guns, ban guns. You're right. I mean, it's all about take the guns. Where is David Hogg on this? He's not saying a damn word, is he? He was on TV yesterday.
Yep.
He was on that morning show in the morning. So he just babbled the same thing. We just need to make everybody safe. So what rules do you want to make everybody safe? Because what's the worst rampant thing going on in Europe where basically guns are banned, illegal, and not allowed? Knife attacks. So it just does not make any sense. So what is going on, Michael? What's happened to this world that we live in?
Well, look, here's what it boils down to. Down in Parkland, the shooter was allowed to just do what they were going to do. The police were there. They were ordered to stand down. How many dead?
It was 17.
Okay. And in Maryland, a cop went in, actually did his job. A good guy with the gun shot the bad guy with the gun. How many people are dead?
2 injured and 1 dead, which was the shooter. Exactly what should have happened.
So let's take a lesson from that and realize that, we do need to put armed guards inside the schools if we really want the shooting to stop. Now, the gun grabbers don't really want the shooting to stop because each new mass shooting, moves them one step closer to convincing America to surrender their Second Amendment rights. And if the government is willing to treat us this badly when we are armed, you can just imagine how bad it will be once we are disarmed.
No, exactly. Me and the wife were just at the gun range this weekend. It was packed. There was waiting lines, taking order. The NRA has more members joined now than probably ever before, and people are actually waking up to a good guy with a gun will protect you when most of these cops will stand outside and not do a damn thing.
Well, in the case of the Coral Beach police, they were literally ordered to stay out of the building. And that, to me, is a dead giveaway that Parkland was this staged event. They had all these crisis actors ready to go. The one at the Veterans Home in California obviously caught them by surprise. They weren't ready to exploit it in the media. And as you say, scant attention paid to this one in Maryland because the idea of a cop actually stopping a mass shooting at a school it goes against the narrative that guns have to be taken away.
So, and you will not see David Hogg and any one of the other school kids or any of the CNN or anybody else that was toting all this stuff. They're going to turn it to promote this weekend where we're going to get 1 million kids out. What about the school? I think it was Maryland where this happened. The school was literally not able to afford the power or the heat to keep the kids warm, yet spent $100-something thousand to bus the kids to an anti-gun rally.
Yeah, so, it's pretty messed up there in Baltimore. I mean, they're on the edge of bankruptcy, and you're absolutely right. The city of Baltimore doesn't have the money to keep those classrooms heated during this very hard winter. But yeah, all of a sudden they find all of this money to get these kids onto a bus and get them up to this event.
If I was a parent, I'd be filing a lawsuit. I've heard repeated stories of kids that refused to go out on this walkout this last week, and they were suspended, They were ridiculed, they had problems, and all this kind of stuff. there was an actual teacher who said, well, can we have a pro-life walkout? She was suspended, and she only talked to the board members in the school. So the board suspended her and kicked her out of school for pro-life, but you can take every kid out of school for a pro or an anti-gun movement. So if they're not in class, does the taxpayer money come back to us?
Well, probably not.
I mean, we're paying for it.
But they're exploiting these kids to try and build sympathy. Oh, we must save the children. Must save the children. Teach them how to shoot.
That's what the NRA is for. The NRA is the biggest national training safety class in the world, bigger than any place ever. What was the brown shirts?
Neil?
They were kids.
Neil, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Apparently down in Florida, gun owners, along with the National Rifle Association, are filing lawsuits against Florida's new gun law, basically saying that the demand to turn over bump stocks and long rifles and guns by under 21s is an unconstitutional taking of property. And there is merit in that argument, because if you get back to that Fifth Amendment, it says the government may not take your property or use it without just compensation. Of course, they do all the time. All of the spying on the American people is using our computers, our electricity, our bandwidth, and there's no compensation whatsoever. So the government doesn't really play by the rules anymore. And apparently from the NRA's point of view, their concern is this violating the constitutional rights of young adults between the ages of 18 and 21. Because at age 18, legally they are adults. Now, when I was a kid, when I was growing up, the age at which you got your first firearm was 12, your 12th birthday. You knew ahead of time what was going to be inside that wrapped package. It was going to be a small bolt-action rifle. And you were taught how to use it safely. Everybody had a gun in that town, multiple guns in most cases. There was never any mass shootings at our school. There was only one incident, and that appeared to have been an attempted suicide. But the more they take the guns away, the more the violence spins out of control. Now, another area of violence going on that we need to basically look at, and that is this string of bombings down in Texas. Because apparently earlier today, there was a bomb that went off at a Schertz, Texas FedEx facility. And apparently it was on its way to its intended target, but it didn't get there. And they're saying they're pretty convinced that this is linked to all the other bombings that have been going up. Now, the latest good news is they found a sixth bomb that had not exploded. And supposedly the bomb squad is taking it apart. But that will give them a lot of material for forensic analysis. Maybe they can find this guy and find out what he's all about. But so far, it may be race-related when you look at the unfortunate victims, the ill, the injured, and the dead. And this FedEx facility is located near San Antonio, and the FBI is on the case and saying, yes, they think it's linked to the Austin blasts. No notes in the paper. What's missing from this is the ego for somebody who's like a mass bomber or a serial killer. They want their moment in the ink, and that's missing here. That's very, very strange. Now, let's talk about the domestic politics. A lot of people are very concerned about Gina Haspel. They're saying she should be in prison for war crimes, not angling for the head of the CIA. And it's like Nuremberg never happened. We're back to being a country that uses torture, that advocates torture, that allows torture, and now one of the torturers is going to be head of the Central Intelligence Agency. And apparently she is so enthusiastic about physical abuse, she actually has a nickname. And according to the former CIA official John Kiriakou, he said, "We did call her Bloody Gina. Gina was always very quick and very willing to use force. Gina and people like Gina did it because they enjoyed doing it. They tortured just for the sake of torture, not for the sake of gathering information." Well, you need to remember, people who understand how this works, you don't get reliable information using torture. You just don't. What you get is the victim screaming out whatever he thinks the torturer wants to hear. It's not reliable information. I know Donald Trump believes that torture works, but it doesn't really. All torture gets you are politically convenient confessions. Oh, we've got the mastermind of 9/11, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. He confessed. We only had to waterboard him 160 times, too. He must be telling us the truth. That's why the Inquisition used torture. They couldn't prove these people were all witches and warlocks and wizards, so they would just torture them until they said, "Yes, I am." "Okay, you're guilty. Going to set you on fire." Now, there are some glimmers of hope out there. We have an establishment journalist, a corporate journalist, Michael Goodwin. He's the chief political columnist for the New York Post and a former bureau chief for the New York Times, and he's blaming the New York Slimes and the Washington Compost for the destruction of journalistic standards in the United States. And that is something we've commented on quite a bit, that we have to stick to those standards. We have to be more professional than the professionals. But lately we've been seeing the corporate media just abandon the basics of good professional journalism in favor of just constantly screaming about Russia and Trump and whatever all else there. And it is costing them. The American public are turning away from the corporate media. Actually, the global public is. Now, James Comey and Chris Steele could actually be in trouble because apparently during the whole course of this Christopher Steele dossier, we now know it is a work of fiction. And yet it was represented to the FISA court and backed up with an article out of Yahoo News that also came from Christopher Steele. It was presented to the FISA court as absolute verified fact in order to get the warrant to spy on Carter Page. Well, basically, you've got the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Charles Grassley and Senator Lindsey Graham are both sending letters to Attorney General Jeff Sessions in which they want to have a second special counsel investigating the FBI and Justice Department for the misconduct during the 2016 election. Now, Sessions may not go along with that, and he's there to protect the insiders. Article coming out of ORAS. Yes, this is going to be worse than Watergate. And it's talking about after the firing of Andrew McCabe, basically Trump is trying to suggest strongly that Robert Mueller's investigation should be over soon. They've wasted a lot of time, a lot of money, and they haven't found anything of their original agenda. And there is apparently speculation that the reason Trey Gowdy did not run for re-election in this November's elections is that Trump plans to fire Jeff Sessions, make Trey Gowdy the Attorney General, and then it would be up to Trey Gowdy could go ahead and fire Robert Mueller. And Trump could evade the obvious attacks in the media saying, "Oh, he's covering up. It's a cover-up." You know, it's terrible. Now, there's a lot of strong talk coming out from the Democrats. Out in California, Democratic Representative Ted Lieu is predicting that if Trump fires Robert Mueller, there'll be widespread civil unrest. And he goes on to say, if the president does go ahead and fire Robert Mueller, we would have people take to the streets. I believe there would be widespread civil unrest because Americans believe the rule of law is paramount. Well, yes, that's why Trump won the election. And so Lieu goes on and says, I think you're going to have protests and marches and rallies and sit-ins. I believe Americans would not stand for the firing of Robert Mueller. it's almost like Lou is threatening a Republican versus Democrat civil war. But his numbers are a little off. Over at the Drudge Report, they had a poll, and 3/4 of the respondents said Trump should fire Mueller. I'd like to see him fired. Now, over in Syria, they're preparing for a major U.S. military attack. The U.S. has been telegraphing for a week now that they're going to go back on in and start smashing stuff up. Apparently, Russian troops have already been deployed to critical locations in the hope this will deter Washington because of Russia's threat to attack the U.S. military if any Russian forces are under threat. So this is brinksmanship. They're going right up to the very, very edge here. Meanwhile, the U.S. is building a new military garrison to control the largest Syrian oil field. This is at basically in the Omar oil fields in the province of Deir ez-Zor. Now, of course, what the U.S. is doing is what Israel is doing in the Golan Heights. Even though they don't own that land, they're just going to go ahead and start drilling for oil. Hey, as long as we got to stay around in Syria, let's make some money. They're stealing Syria's oil. They have no right to be there. They have no right to be building a garrison. Syria wants them out. Russia wants them out. They do not have a resolution from the UN Security Council to be there. There isn't even a declaration of war. What this is dangerously close to open, direct conflict between Russia and the United States. It's been 15 years since Operation Iraqi Freedom, and there's an article about it in the original antiwar.com where one of the veterans of that conflict has come on out and said Iraqi freedom was an unmitigated failure. And it really was. They could never declare victory because the stated public reasons for the Iraq War never existed. They hadn't helped with 9/11. They weren't partners with Al-Qaeda. In fact, they were ideological enemies. And they never had the nuclear weapons. Now, the real goal of the war in Iraq was to keep Iraq's oil selling for the US dollar. And in that context, yeah, the war worked. They've got a puppet government in Baghdad, and the oil is being sold for US dollars. And from that point of view, the war is a success. And for all those young people who got killed or crippled in the war, well, that's just the cost of doing business. Just the cost of doing business. The White House, rather, has now openly acknowledged the United States of America is at war right now, this moment, in 7 different countries, including Libya and Niger. Now, this was an unclassified White House report sent to Congress and obtained by the New York Times. I would not be surprised if there are other covert interventions going on around the world. But these are the 7 sort of official wars. In fact, they even use that word. The U.S. is officially fighting wars in 7 countries. None of them have a congressional declaration of war. None of them are backed up by Security Council resolutions. Okay, now, as you know, NATO has been running a major military naval exercise in the Mediterranean. They're calling it Operation Sea Guardian, and its stated purpose is to shape the waters of Western and Central Mediterranean. In other words, they're basically going on in and they're getting ready to basically try and turn the Mediterranean into a European lake. They don't like the fact that Russia has access to the warm waters of the Mediterranean. That was why Crimea was such a big deal. All right, we've got some callers here. Let's go ahead with Tony in Puerto Rico. Aloha, Tony. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Speaking of war, I have a quick comment. Why isn't General Bentley Butler, why isn't he written about more often or spoken about more often in the media?
Well, because obviously those who favor war don't want people reading that little booklet that he wrote about war as a racket. And of course, his other claim to fame was basically heading off the attempted coup d'etat against President Franklin Roosevelt by the bankers. And that was all hushed up and covered up. It wasn't declassified until somewhere in the 1970s.
Okay, my other question is, what kind of deal you think FDR made with the plotters?
I'm sorry, which plotters are we talking about now?
The plotters, who spoke to General Smedley Butler, take over the country. I mean, what kind of deal FDR made with them?
He didn't make a deal with them. The reason they wanted to take over the country is they thought Roosevelt was going in the wrong direction, and they wanted to establish a fascist state in the United States based on the one that Mussolini had in Italy. And they came dangerously close to pulling it off. There's actually a movie, 7 Days in May, that's loosely based on the story, but they hide the role of the bankers and financiers, and instead they just say there's a rogue general.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
All right, thank you. We're going to switch to Mo in Florida. Aloha, Mo. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I hope you got time for me. I listen to you all the time. I haven't called in lately, but I just, sometimes you just, you think you know what's going on. You follow the stuff. I listen to you all the time, and many other channels. But are you familiar with the SES? The Senior Executive Service?
Yes, I've read about it a little bit. Somebody even sent me a blurb about it today.
I was so blown away because I didn't know about this. And I mean, these people, they have 10,000 people in the government. They start off with a salary higher than the vice president, which is like $250,000. Mm-hmm. And they are basically the deep state.
They're the bureaucracy.
They're the ones who, they're just like a cancer that's infiltrated the whole the government. And with these, I always go crazy because people say deep state, the bad guys. No, it's the Senior Executive Service. And this guy, Michael McKibben.
Yes.
He's a CEO for Leader Technologies that sued Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah, he's got a website now that he's identified every member of the SEC, the Senior Executive Service. Yeah, the SES. He's identified every one of them by name. You can go to his website. I don't have the website right now, but Michael MC KIBPN, Michael McKibben. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Tony, I got to let you go. We've got to take a break for commercial. Back with another phone call. Oh, I'm sorry. This is Mo in Florida. We have to let you go. Back after these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're talking about NATO's naval operations in the Mediterranean, where basically they're establishing their plans to take control of the entire Mediterranean. And obviously a lot of focus over at that eastern end. So anyway, apparently Israel is once again making noises of annexing the West Bank. And apparently they're doing it with full U.S. government support. And apparently Israel's education minister, Naftali Bennett, basically disavowed the notion of a Palestinian state. He said that we're done with that. They have a Palestinian state in Gaza. We can all cram in there. So Israel's attitude is going to be that annexing the West Bank will be just like annexing the Golan Heights. There was international outrage for a couple of months. Now it's been years, and Israel still has the property. All right, another phone call here. Terry in Nebraska. I'm sorry, New Brunswick. Aloha, Terry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Michael. Well, you're not on the weekend, so I was kind of news surfing, and I ran across something that seems kind of noteworthy. That it's called the Senior Executive Service, and it's something I hadn't heard anybody else on the news mentioned, or I missed it.
Our last caller was talking about it exactly. Basically, how
Oh,
it's
really?
yeah.
Okay. No, I had the volume turned down and couldn't hear you while I was waiting for the call to go through.
No, yeah, we just did with that basically, and he gave us a very good overview of what that was all about, and you can hear that on the replay of the show, I guess.
Oh, yeah, I will. I ran across it on American intelligence media is where I seen it, and
yep.
I've seen a couple of other articles by them. To me, they appear to be a credible news outlet. So. Okay, Michael, I won't take any more of your time.
All right, well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and we're coming up here on the top of the hour and station identification. Now, a lot of people are starting to wonder, when is Al Jazeera going to air the undercover documentary they made about the Israel lobby in the United States? They did one for Great Britain. It was aired. Israel supporters screamed anti-Semite and Jew hate. And apparently the same producers did one here in the U.S. Where is it? Is some kind of pressure being applied to Al Jazeera to keep it off the air, the way pressure was applied to American TV to keep the Franklin scandal documentary off the air? But obviously, the Israel lobby is very, very nervous about all of this stuff. Okay, there's the music. We're going to take a short break for station identification. We'll be back with hour number 2 after these words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, as you know, a short while ago, Vladimir Putin was giving their equivalent of the State of the Union speech and unveiled several new weapons. And the Pentagon and Defense Department are out there saying, nah, it probably doesn't really exist, which prompted Russia to release a video showing at least one of the weapons doing what Putin said they were going to do. The big question, though, is what does Russia have we don't really know about? And we got a good taste of that back in the Black Sea a while ago, a little more than a year ago, when a Russian electronic warfare aircraft was able to just totally paralyze an Aegis destroyer, guided missile destroyer, the USS Donald Cook. And now we have another demonstration here. This is over in FortRuss.com, where apparently Ukraine is having difficulty sending drones into Russia to spy on them. They get over Russian territory and they simply stop following the orders from the ground. Now, is it just a powerful jammer? Well, apparently one of the other drones succeeded in getting a photograph, or a video rather, of this new vehicle, which seems to have a blue laser that it's using on these drones. Now, whether it's just a targeting laser or it actually is like cooking the internal electronics, we don't know. But it does show a tremendous capability, and it does underscore the fact that we don't really know what Russia has or doesn't have. And that makes going to war very, very risky indeed. I mean, so far as Syria is concerned, Russia's weapons have held up. They've done what they're supposed to do. I think one of the biggest mistakes that Donald Trump made was that cruise missile attack against that Syrian airfield, where half the cruise missiles missed the target completely, and the other half didn't hit anything important at the target site. So it was a huge $60 million worth of cruise missiles, and the airfield was back in operation the following day. Now, getting to the economic news, Germany and China are agreeing to work on steel overcapacity and the U.S. threat of tariffs, and they want to work on solutions through the G20 group of industrialized nations. So that's a good place to take this debate. Again, the tariffs, I don't think were a good idea. Not at this time. I understand the need to develop a totally internal domestic steel and aluminum capability if we are going into a world war, which I don't want to do anyway. Now, Trump has signed an executive order banning Venezuela's cryptocurrency. He may have moved a little fast, because you want to talk about having a miracle save your rear end. Venezuela just announced the discovery of what they think is the 4th largest gold mine on Earth, estimated at 52 million troy ounces of gold. So I'm sure our bankers are going to be looking for a reason to invade Venezuela. Got to get that gold the way we got Libya's gold, the way we stole the gold out of the basement of the World Trade Towers and so forth. Over in Ukraine, the effects of growing close to Europe are painfully evident. Ukraine's public debt has doubled in the last 4 years, while personal incomes have been cut in half. And the Ukrainian economy is in a catastrophic state after 4 years of Euro reforms. And at the end of 2013, Ukraine's state and publicly guaranteed debt was 40% of the GDP, and by the end of 2017, it had more than doubled, exceeding 80% of the gross domestic product. So being part of the EU is not all it's cracked up to be, because all of the member states of the EU are in economic trouble, as well as dealing with this open border refugee situation. Now, over in Great Britain, apparently there are these Blairites, members of parliament, and they're opposed to Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, and apparently they're meeting with the Liberal Democrats to set up a centrist pro-Brussels party, a new political party, with the Liberal Democrats and the Tory Europhiles. And the goal of this political party is basically to end Brexit and keep Great Britain welded to Europe. Keep those borders open, keep the Channel Tunnel open. Now, Jeremy Corbyn's caution over blaming Russia for the Salisbury poisoning was a watershed moment. It's caused a number of people to question why they're in the party. Well, there's nothing wrong with what Jeremy Corbyn suggested. Let's look at all the evidence before we rush to judgment. All right, we're going to go ahead and do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Over in Germany, Interior Minister Horst Seehofer is saying that internal border checks must stay in place in Germany for as long as the EU fails to protect its external borders. He then went on to slam the Schengen agreement, because apparently Europe is sort of, rather Brussels is sort of acting like the cops at Parkland. We'll take care of you, and then they don't. And so Germany is saying we have to protect our own borders. I think as Merkel looks at a possible election at the end of her current term, I mean, she is chancellor again, but I think she has to realize the German people are very, very unhappy with what this flood of refugees has done to Europe. We're hearing it from virtually every single country. You know, this country isn't what it used to be. It's been turned into a third world, everything blended together, dirt in the streets, mess. All because George Soros and his buddies think it's a great idea. Now, Trump is out there trying to defund the sanctuary cities. The courts have already ruled that Trump has discretionary authority over federal funding to these sanctuary cities who are refusing to enforce federal immigration law. And then they turned around and said, well, you've still got to give us the money. And Trump said, no, I don't. So he's hosting a roundtable at the White House today for federal officials, members of Congress, and state attorney generals to ramp up pressure on cities that don't comply with immigration law. And the president is looking to use the White House meeting to highlight the problems he has with funding these cities and pressure cities to conform with federal immigration laws. It's a very, very simple thing. unless you're a liberal. I want my free stuff, and don't tell me what to do. Now, interestingly enough, over at Los Alamitos in Orange, California, they just voted to reject the state's sanctuary law. And they basically had a vote of 4-1, citing the Constitution for their reasoning. And they're basically saying that at least within Los Alamitos, they will cooperate fully with federal immigration officials. We've got to get this going. We've got to get these illegals, back over the border, or they're going to vote in our election in November, and they're going to vote for the Democrats. And they're not supposed to vote. So either we get an ironclad voter ID law, or we start flinging these illegals back over that border, back over the wall. Get the pumpkin chunkin people to just bring out their air cannons. Longest range and most number of ounces wins the prize. All right, we're going to take a phone call from Bill in Pennsylvania. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mean Mike the man. How you doing, buddy?
Doing okay.
Hey, man, I ain't called you since last year. I listen to you every day, though.
Thank you.
Great job, man. Keep doing what you're doing. We love you, man. Claire, too. Give her our condolences. Anyway, I'm calling about that FBI guy, man. He's getting his pension. I was watching your show from yesterday.
Yep.
And there's some kind of, circle thing going around where he's going to get his pension again. Man, there is, no justice. What happened?
Well, I've heard several different variations about McCabe and his pension. We do have all these people who are already offering him just a job in their office until he reaches the end of his 20 years, which is just a few days, so that he can qualify for the pension. It turns out, first of all, if you are a federal government employee, it is golden time. Got all kinds of benefits, taxpayer funded, of course, multiple pensions that are overlapping. And apparently, the big pension is the one that was threatened by his being fired. But I think they're just going to go ahead and give it to him. Behind that, there's another federal government pension that doesn't kick in until age 60. He's going to have that one anyway, regardless of what is decided about the big pension. It's not as much money, and he doesn't get to collect it for another 10 years, because he's only 50 now. But
can I ask you one thing about that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Besides all this talk about pension, if you really get down to what this guy did, along with Comey and the rest of them that were literally trying to infiltrate and have a soft coup on the presidential election, isn't that an act of treason? Why is it this retirement thing such a big deal when he really should be put in jail for what he did?
I'm in agreement. There's a whole bunch of people in Washington, D.C. that need to be seeing the inside of a prison cell. And of course,
I don't understand why everybody's making a big deal out of this pension thing when, what happened to breaking the law and treasonous acts against the Constitution besides the Clintons and the Bushes? That's so common, it's criminal that these guys are even walking around in the street. But here's another guy, along with Comey, Loretta Lynch, the rest of them, that are just getting away with it, just like they always do. And this guy's even getting his pension. Can I say one last thing before I hang up?
Sure.
You remember that when Trump was running his campaign and he made that poem speech about the snake that bit him at the end of the poem?
Yeah.
You remember that? About the little poem he did? Well, all this talk with this other CIA guy who's talking about assassinating him coming, because I was watching your show from yesterday where these guys are blatantly just saying right on public television how they're going to assassinate the president. Well, he ought to listen to his own poems, because if he don't do something about this soon, they're just going to wind up, with the Zapruder film. It's going to be part 2. What do you think?
I think it's a very real possibility. Trump's opponents have been unable to find a legal way to get him out of the White House. They haven't found anything they can impeach him for. They toyed briefly with the idea of simply having him declared insane and removing him under the 25th Amendment. But Trump is obviously not insane. And yeah, that leaves assassination. And I am distressed at how much talk I'm hearing about assassination these days.
Yeah, it's really just out of control. Like when Obama was president, I think somebody from, you know, I don't want to say our side or the other side or whatever, but somebody made a comment just in joking on Facebook, and the FBI went and locked that guy up. Do you remember when that happened? I mean, it's just some knucklehead on the internet said something, and then now these guys are all over the place talking about killing our president, and nobody's doing anything. I mean, not even him. I think he ought to start taking more action. It's like what your guy Justin in New Jersey. He said one thing that really hit home with me is like, what is he waiting for? I mean, he got to start cleaning house here, man.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And again, I think he's getting bad advice. We know that Jared Kushner was not exactly the best influence on him. And, you know, Trump's big mistake coming into the White House was he wanted to be magnanimous in victory, and he kept a lot of the holdovers from the Obama era, thinking that because he was now the boss, they would work for him and be loyal to him. Well, that's the way it works in business. It's not the way it works inside the Beltway in Washington, D.C. Everybody's compromised. Everybody's got connections. Everybody's got secret agendas. And Trump, unfortunately, was as dangerously naive coming into the White House as Jimmy Carter was. Jimmy Carter got completely blindsided by some of what was going on around him. And I'd like to see Trump put on those presidential brass knuckles and start getting to work, because you know, I'd like to see him fire Sessions and put in Trey Gowdy as the Attorney General. But we're coming up on the midterm.
Would be a really good thing.
We're coming up on the midterm elections in November. That's, you know, a little more than half a year. And if Trump doesn't start taking control of immigration and the election process, he's going to lose Congress. And then the Democrats will impeach him and remove him from office for anything they can make on up. I noticed they're still pushing this porn actress. I keep blanking on her name. And now apparently they've had another woman who's former contestant on The Apprentice. Stormy Daniels is the name of the porn actress. They're already out there saying that she passed a polygraph test. She must be telling the truth. Well, actually, polygraphs are not that accurate, and they're actually very easy to defeat. And intelligence agents are taught precisely how to do that. Voice stress analyzers are much, much more accurate. I had a chance to actually work with those many years ago as part of a TV show. It was a documentary about how useful they were. Anyway, anything else? Want to thank you for the work that you do. You're a true patriot. I was watching you, I think about a month or two ago, when you were real sick, and you know, thank God your wife's okay, and we just really appreciate what you do, man, and just, you know, just keep doing what you do, man. You're a real patriot, and, you know, I watch you rather than watching the news. I just don't even deal with it. I just don't even spend my time wasting my time. It's like, that's all it is, a waste of time. I watch you and listen to what you got to say, and you get like the information all around the world, and the real story. That's, you know, that would be a good name for something that you guys do, like just call it The Real Story. You know what I mean? Instead of fudging it and lying and everything else, you guys really do a good job, man. Well, thank you very much for those kind words, and we're going to let you go and get on back to the news. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, George Soros is basically using some of his German non-governmental organizations to lobby Germany to put pressure on Hungary. And at issue is the fact that Hungary recently passed an NGO transparency law, which demands greater transparency of foreign-funded bodies in the country. And of course, this directly affects Soros' Open Borders charities and the pressure groups. He basically wants that law to go away, which tells us he knows he's got something that cannot see the light of day. He's got to keep it concealed. Now, apparently, Soros is also trying to influence the political situation in the Czech Republic and Slovakia. And basically, Peter Zantovsky, a lecturer at the University of Economics in Prague, told Sputnik News, doubting the doubts regarding the West's potential intentions to kickstart a color revolution in the Central European state. Well, maybe the U.S. isn't, but Soros certainly could. And I do wish that Mr. Soros would retire and stop mucking about with the world. We didn't elect him to be our planetary ruler. And I do think that it's time that we regained our sovereignty from the guys with all the money. Because having a lot of money does not necessarily mean you're a good person. We'll be back after these commercials. And aloha America, welcome back to our show. And if you are able to donate and support Republic Broadcasting, and we really do need it. This is no joke, this is no drill. We need to keep going. We need to keep fighting the fight against the liars, the greedy, the war hawks, and we need your help to do it. Any amount at all, anything you can do will be gratefully appreciated. So the postal address to send a check or a money order is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, and that's in Round Rock, Texas, 78664. If you want to be anonymous, you can always send cash. And if you want to phone on in and become a recurring subscriber, that number is 800-724-2719, extension 03. And again, a reminder that there is this promotion going on right now for about another 70 days. There's a time limit on it. And basically, RBN has a fundraiser with Front Sight Training Academy. And Front Sight is located in Nevada. It's this world-class combat shooting training facility. Trains cops from all over the country. For a one-time donation of $500 to RBN, you will receive a lifetime commander's membership, where you get discounts on guns, you get discounts on ammunition, you get discounts on rental, and it's a sweet deal. If I were living anywhere around Nevada, I'd sign up for this. Okay. So thank you for your help. The network thanks you, and we need to get back to the news here. BBC is still trying to deflect criticism over the Telford grooming gang coverage. And we've been seeing this all over Europe, where in order to protect the open borders global agenda, crimes being committed by the migrants, the refugees, aren't reported. The media in places like Sweden and Germany have been told, you know, if you have to report it, do not say where the person originated. Don't even say their name. And yet everybody sees crime is going on up. So anyway, this BBC had this Telford grooming gangs story right in front of them, and they didn't go with it. And then the story came out other places, and they got hundreds of complaints saying, why didn't you cover this? We need to know this is happening to our daughters. Why were you so reluctant to cover this? And unfortunately, BBC's news editor came on out and said, well, you know, there was all these other stories, and Telford had to get pushed down. People aren't buying that, though. They see it as a very clear attempt by the corporate media to protect the refugee agenda. Now, Germany, specifically Angela Merkel, is now claiming that Russia must prove they were not involved in the Skripal poisoning case. Now, first of all, you can't prove a negative. And this is a return to Code Napoleon. It's up to Merkel as the accuser to provide proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Russia was somehow involved in the poisoning of this ex-spy, Sergei Skripal, and his daughter. Now, the timeline that's worked on out is Skripal and his daughter Yulia were found unconscious on a bench at a shopping center in Salisbury. They had apparently been at a pub just before, and they could have been attacked anywhere. Depends on how long the poison works. But Merkel's going on back to this thing, Great Britain is still refusing to allow anyone to analyze samples from the attack site. It's back to that, trust us. We know what's going on. We wouldn't lie to you. We're the government. Yeah, you're the government that gave us the dodgy dossier that got us stuck in Iraq. Now, over in France, Macron is refusing to recognize the Russian election result in Crimea. They're still out there with this lie that Russia stole Crimea, and that's not what happened. Crimea voted to secede from Ukraine, their right guaranteed under the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They then voted to ask to merge with the Russian Republic. Both referendums passed with an over 90% margin, and that's what happened. But the U.S. policy is we don't recognize the Crimeans' people's right to have those referendums. Therefore, by default, Russia has stolen Crimea. And so we're doing this little political tit for tat where Macron is saying, I refuse to recognize the Russian election results in Crimea. You know what the problem is? You're not allowed to just sit there, only recognizing elections that turn out the way you want them to. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about this whole kerfuffle with Russia and Skripal. And it's very obviously, it's Saddam's nukes all over again. Now, Austria is breaking ranks with the rest of the EU and saying we do have to have a full-fledged investigation by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons and all those involved. There are rules. The nations that signed that treaty, are obligated to follow those rules in the event of an incident. Britain didn't. They just pointed the finger and said, j'accuse. So Austria is saying the same thing that Corbyn was saying. Let's find out what actually happened. Poland is following Britain's lead. They're going to start ejecting Russian diplomats. So they're just pushing this as hard as they can. And I remember the Cold War, the first Cold War, and it was all about, tension and sucking money out of the American people for weapons that were never going to be used. This feels very different. This does feel like they're actually working toward an actual confrontation directly between the U.S. and Russia, and I think that's going to be an absolute horrible, horrible deal. Now, here is a interesting development. Apparently, the London Times reported on March 14th that 40 people in Salisbury needed treatment because of poisoning. Okay? Now, a reader's letter to the paper written by Stephen Davies, consultant in emergency medicine, Salisbury National Health Service Foundation Trust, disputes that report. And basically, the letter seems to say that none of the patients in the hospital were affected by nerve agents at all. They were poisoned, and they needed treatment for the poisoning, but this doctor is saying there's no symptoms of nerve agents at use. I don't know, maybe they got some food poisoning over at the bar they were at. Now, apparently, Angela Merkel is calling for a restart of what was called the Weimar Triangle, which is a close alliance between Germany, Poland, and France. And what they're doing is they're forming a power block to basically work through their different views on migration, energy, and the future of the European Union. I think Merkel's got designs on Brussels here. Former French President Sarkozy has been arrested for corruption. It's a big case. It goes back to the 2007 French elections, where apparently his campaign team accepted a 50 million euro donation from Muammar Gaddafi during the 2007 French elections. Well, he should have set up a charitable foundation, of course. That's his mistake. So he's in trouble right now. Over in China, a former missile force commander has now been appointed their defense minister. It's Lieutenant General Wei Fenghe, and he's been named as defense minister. He's now the public face of China's military around the world. Meanwhile, our government is scrambling to try and make the North Korean talks happen. Some mid-level diplomats from North Korea, South Korea, and the U.S. actually met in Finland to try and sort out protocols and everything. But basically, they're saying that this is a rush job to get this done in May, and the White House is overseeing a frantic scramble to resolve even the most fundamental questions on the U.S. side. For one thing, where will the summit be? Who will be at the table? What should be on the agenda? Well, Kim Jong-un has already said what he wants on the agenda. He wants a peace treaty. He wants the official end of the Korean War, because it never officially ended. And he wants guarantees that if he gives up his nuclear weapons, he won't be attacked. I wouldn't trust this government, Kim, but you're the boss. You do what you want to do. South Korea is sending some of their pop stars, singers, to perform in North Korea for the first time in more than a decade. And so more than 150 artists, including K-pop stars, are to visit Pyongyang from 31st of March in what will be a reciprocal visit after North Korea sent performers to the Pyongyang Winter Olympics. And the visit, which was agreed after talks between the countries on the border area of Panmunjom, and will include a series of concerts, will last until the 3rd of April, South Koreans Unification Ministry said. So they've already got a whole ministry, a bureaucracy set up for the goal of reunification. I think it's long, long overdue. Getting into the world of political correctness, the College of the Holy Cross will do away with its knight mascot and all other such imagery to avoid any symbolic connection to knights who fought for Christianity during the Crusades. And Reverend Philip Burrows, president of the Massachusetts-based school, explained the decision in a letter to the student body. Burrows wrote, "The visual depiction of a knight in conjunction with the moniker Crusader inevitably ties us directly to the reality of the religious wars and the violence of the Crusade." Well, that's an absolute historical fact. That's not going to go away just because you get rid of the mascot. And then the Reverend goes on to say, this imagery stands in contrast to our stated values. Over the coming months, the college will gradually phase out use of all knight-related imagery. So once again, in the name of political correctness, history gets erased. Now, let's talk about Cambridge Analytica. That's a big, big stink that has happened, and it involves Facebook. And apparently there was this undercover investigation that revealed how Cambridge Analytica secretly campaigns in elections across the world. I think meddling would actually be a better word. And bosses were filmed talking about using bribes, former spies, fake IDs, and sex workers to influence elections around the world. Now, a story coming out of Post News D2. Hundreds of millions of Facebook users are likely to have had their private information harvested by companies that exploited the same terms as the firm that collected data and passwords and passed it on to Cambridge Analytica. And apparently the data was coming from Facebook, and there's a new whistleblower who's out there saying it was utterly horrifying, and the covert data harvesting was just a routine. Now, Facebook has now suspended the account of the whistleblower who exposed Cambridge Analytica. Too little, too late. The story is out there. And apparently 50 million users have had their data given out by Facebook, which wound up in this Cambridge Analytica. And interestingly enough, it appears, at least to the people in Zizi Adisu, that this might have been done to help President Trump's successful 2016 bid for the presidency. But as it turns on out, if Trump was doing it, so were the Democrats. Obama's campaign's Carol Davidson admits the Democrats sucked out the entire social network of the U.S. and kept that data, and they still have it. And the same campaign director reveals Facebook allowed them to mine American users' profiles in 2012 because they support the Democrats. It's a very liberal organization. Now, not too long ago, Maxine Waters came on out and bragged that Obama has a database with information on every individual in this country. Talk about total information awareness. They try and tailor the campaigns to us, get our votes that way. Now, over in Britain, members of Parliament have summoned Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg to give evidence over the catastrophic failure of process behind the Cambridge Analytica data breach. And people are getting out of Facebook. Zuckerberg's net worth plunged by $5 billion on a single day. And I know he's got plenty of other money, but that had to come as a shock. Israel is becoming the world's top cyber superpower, and this article starts out with the observation, although Israel makes no cars of its own, the world's top auto security companies are all Israeli. The country also receives roughly 1/5 of the world's global private investment in cybersecurity. As independent and state-sponsored hackers wreak havoc, Israel continues to revolutionize its military and lead the way in the field. To start, the Israeli Defense Force recruits the best and brightest coders and hackers as teens to funnel them into their elite cyber warfare units. Because going to the service is compulsory, you can look at the Israeli army as the largest human resources organization in the world. We know about a month ago, there was a story that came out where Israel was literally putting out bids to buy zero-day exploits. But the hard reality is that a lot of the world's hackers are in Israel. Israel has the highest per capita density of cyber criminals of any country on earth. Let's see. Now, apparently, there is a BitTorrent client called MediaGet, and apparently somebody has put out a Trojanized version of this. It hijacked 400,000 PCs last week. And the malware was found dropping a cryptocurrency miner program as payload on infected Windows computers that mine electronium digital coins for attackers using victims' CPU cycles. Now, for the Android users, pre-installed malware has been found on 5 million popular Android phones. And the malware is inside applications, Yellow Calendars, Change Me Launcher, Android Services Secure Wi-Fi, and System Service ZDSGT. And if you have any of those on your phone, you got to delete them. Now, there's a company called GrayKey, and they claim to have developed a password cracker for the iPhone. And for $15,000, GrayKey promises to open up iPhones for the police so that they can go on in. They'll have full access to a device's file system, messages, photos, call logs, browsing history, keychain, and other passwords, and more. So, apparently over in Great Britain, another classic case of do what we say, don't do as we do. The British government's secure server setup is patchy at best. That's how they described it. And apparently many of the British websites are broken, misconfigured, or insecure. I think part of the problem is that we've made these systems too complicated, too decadent. It's very hard for people to maintain them. We had an incident this morning where Claire needed to send an email to somebody, and it came back a remote server misconfigured. So we're reaching the point where we can no longer actually maintain our own IT. And reaching a point where you can't manage your existing infrastructure is usually what precedes a crash. Certainly that happened in the Roman Empire. As the debt built up and the skill level dropped, they no longer had the means to maintain the roads or the aqueducts, and eventually it all stopped working. We could see that here. Apparently British police forces are spending peanuts on cybercrime training. They just don't think it's an issue. It is an issue. Cybercrime is out of control. But apparently police forces across Britain have spent just £1.3 million on cybercrime training courses over the past few years. That's woefully inadequate. Now, Laura Ingraham is wagging the finger at the Internal Revenue Service. Apparently, they allowed 2.5 million cases of illegal identity theft. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, global warming's having a bad effect in New Jersey. It's snowing over here.
Yeah, I'm getting emails from my family in the New England area.
And it's not even tomorrow yet, you know. And I couldn't believe how early this started. But it's probably going to be pretty bad tomorrow.
Yep.
But I got everything done today, so. Hey, Mike, I want to make it very easier for your listeners to understand who's the good guy and the bad guy in Syria. Now, you got the moderate rebels. Now, if they're so great and the people love them, how come when Assad and his forces clear an area, the people run to the government forces, which is Assad? That's very simple to figure out then who's the good guy, right?
Absolutely.
There you go. And, hey, Mike, I found there's a website called Moon of Alabama. You ever heard of it?
Yeah, I've linked to them on a number of occasions.
If you go on there, on the left-hand side under recent MOA posts, on the third down, it says Guardian rips off Goebbels, what I told you yesterday. If maybe you can post that picture of the spider of Putin over the earth, you know, using it as a propaganda tool.
I ran that as an article with the images embedded in it yesterday. I suppose I could put it up. Personally, it's kind of a petty thing for them to have done.
It's sad, though, Mike. Like, we're the ones that are like that. Like, it's like a total opposite of, we're that spider.
Yeah.
You realize that? We're that spider.
Absolutely.
No, yeah, it's you know, and I see the British, you know, that caller, you had a caller from the UK yesterday. He's right on everything, but he's wrong. I think people more now, and I didn't believe it, are waking up. Because all the message boards and everything are showing people don't believe this crap no more.
Yeah.
So it is working.
Yes.
And that's all I wanted to have to say, Mike. Have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We've got callers on the line. We're going to start with Mateus in Canada. Aloha, Mateus. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Michael. I just have another 100 things on my list. I hope you got time for that.
We'll see.
Okay, I made up a joke just for you. I bet you can guess the punchline. You're pretty smart. What deity do gators worship?
You got me.
Allah.
Okay.
He's the number one. Okay, so moving on. $1,500 to crack into the iPhones. Well, who pays for that? It's the taxpayer.
Yes.
So we have to pay to have our own privacy violated. We don't want our own phones to be hacked. It's such a pathetic slave relationship we have with our society. And then Mark Zuckerberg said his users are dumb effers for trusting him with their personal info. Remember that a while back?
Yes.
And now it's coming out that 50 million of us dumb effers that we were so dumb to trust our personal information was being sold. Now regarding your story on Friday where the congressman was against arming teachers because they're mostly women, remember that?
Yep.
Well, that's just totally ridiculous. It's not like the women have to parallel park their guns back into the gun cases. Give me a break.
No.
Okay, moving on.
If you go to that Front Sight Shooting Academy's website and you look at the video, there are just as many women there training for combat shooting as men. It was a dumb thing to say, almost as dumb as the idea that arming teachers will somehow trigger those teachers into starting to shoot the black and brown children, which is stupid as all get out.
That is so stupid. And then a while back, you were talking about there was a World Government Convention, and I just wanted to say, what an outrageous crime spree that is. Openly traitorous to the human race. They openly say that the topics of their convention was how to put down liberty and self-government. No, it said liberty and self-government is in the crosshairs.
Mm-hmm.
Of their discussion. These guys should be lynched. And I want to mention something about communist China. We all know about Mao and how he killed people that wore glasses because he thought they were educated. I got a bit more research about that. He was basically killing the culture. So if you were even an artist, you were being targeted. And so this was just such a horrible crime against humanity where the actual valuable substance of an entire culture is being exterminated. And so I have empathy for those people.
We're seeing that happen in Europe. We're seeing that happen here in the United States. Our culture, our history is being erased or defaced, in the name of political correctness and not offending anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Mateus.
I'll leave it there. Have a good show. Take care.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to take a break for station identification. Back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. We're going to go back to the telephones to Curtis in Nevada. Aloha, Curtis. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. A while back, you had a report regarding something in plastics that was doing some damage to people. Do you remember the specifics on that?
Yeah, the concern was that microplastics and nanoplastics are somehow finding their way into bottled water, and it could pose a health hazard. Apparently, because of oceanic pollution, they're discovering that one of the things that's killing off sea life is an accumulation of plastics inside their digestive tract, which just gets in the way of the food, and they literally starve to death. Corporate America has just made a real mess of this planet. Of course, they don't have to live with it. They've got their huge gated estates and manicured lawns and all the rest of it. But the rest of us, we have to live with all this stuff. Radiation in the water, chemicals in the water, microbeads, microplastics, nanoplastics. It's a real mess. And our government has just totally dropped the ball. Of course, we know that the Environmental Protection Agency was never really about the environment, but about grabbing land and sequestering it away to fund or to act as collateral on further government borrowing. That's its real job. And it was created by Richard Nixon, as a way to get the U.S. dollar's value back up after the Nixon shock basically put it in the trash can.
The reason why I bring this up is because years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I heard that there's a biphenyl type of something in the plastic that disrupts the hormonal system, the endocrine system, and what it's doing, it's got estrogen. It's an estrogen mimic.
Yes.
what happens when males are exposed to estrogen, and it's actually helping to feminize males and emasculate females. And it's been going on for years. And to me, when I heard this plastic thing, it sounds to me like it's a setup to kind of like introduce people into this. You know, I don't know. I don't know if you've heard that before, but that
Yes,
I've heard that years ago.
I heard that.
Okay, well,
One of the reasons why I try and avoid plastics and so forth is you're not sure about what is leaching out of the plastics into the food and water. Now, the BPH was used as a liner for canned foods so that you wouldn't get the metallic flavor. And then they discovered that, yes, it's an estrogen mimic. They now have a new one out. It's BP something else, but it's still questionable. So Claire and I don't eat a lot of canned foods.
You know, I hate to say this, but and when we were young, the distinctive between male and female, I mean, now it seems blurred. I mean, it seems you see a high percentage of people that you're not quite certain, and you don't want to say anything wrong until you know for sure. I mean, honestly, I've never seen that, you know, until the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, it definitely is a factor. I mean, we have so many toxic and questionable chemicals that we are being fed by corporate food producers. We don't know what it's doing to us. They don't want us to know what it's doing to us. In a lot of cases,
we can see it, Mike.
They don't want us to even know that stuff is in there, like monosodium glutamate.
Right. You know, people like our age, we can see the difference because we have a reference point. We remember, you know. Now it's just, wow, it's just unbelievable how many people it's like they're blurring the genders.
Yes.
You know,
that could definitely be part of it, but the other part of it, of course, is the idea of a unisex or, you know, one sex is an early liberal attempt to blur the gender lines. And liberals can't understand why, no matter how tightly they control the room, the environment, the clothing, and the toys, girls still act like girls and boys still act like boys, because it's in our genetics. That's where the liberal theory breaks down. They think that everything we think is a result of our environment and upbringing. And no, it's a 50-50 mix. Yeah. It's what we inherit genetically from our forebears multiplied by our life experience. And it makes us all each unique individuals.
Yeah. Mike, you know, I was surprised to hear callers mention things like the SES, which I just started to hear about. One of them mentioned the American intelligence media, which I consider a really strong source, Douglas Gabriel. Mm-hmm. This guy, you know, I don't know, have you heard of him?
I've heard of him. I haven't had a lot of time to, you know, visit his work.
There's a X-22 report. These two guys are really favorable on Trump. And the reason why is because they say that Trump was recruited by military intelligence, that this is not just Trump's show, this is him just playing his role. And that's what we're seeing here as far as this is an ongoing, gradual, step-by-step dismantling of the deep state. I believe it's happening, and I kind of like, I want you to kind of like check it out. Maybe you might get a different view of how things are playing out, you know, as far as Trump.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay, Mike. Well, yeah, I just wanted, you know, to bring that up and have a good show, and I'll just keep listening, you know.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the call. Thank you very much for the kind words. And the phone lines are now open again. So let's get on back to some of the news here. Story coming out of electronicintifada.net about how Facebook protects Israel. Didn't protect you, didn't protect your data, but Facebook always protects Israel. And apparently, according to Israel's State Attorney Office, the Israeli government requests an average of 12,000 cases of content to be removed from Facebook each year. And Zuckerberg just goes along with this demand for censorship. No more freedom of speech. Apparently, Amazon is turning over a record amount of customer data to U.S. law enforcement. Apparently, the company received, between January and June of 2017, the company received 1,618 subpoenas, of which the company fully complied with 42%, 229 search warrants, of which the company fully complied with 44%, 89 other court orders, of which the company fully complied with 52%. And Amazon also confirmed it had 75 requests from outside the U.S. through a mutual legal assistance process in which it partially complied with 2 cases. The remaining cases were rejected. Amazon is not saying where those cases came from. Okay, more phone calls. Laura in Michigan, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. In reference to the man was talking about China, I want to give you a movie to watch called China Cry. It's a true story of Nora Lamb when the communists took over China. I mean, if you really want to see what happened, that movie is excellent. Have you ever seen it?
No, I have not. I'll have to look for it online.
It's called China Cry. Another movie is when the communists are taking over Mexico. It's called For Greater Glory. Or No Greater Glory, one of the two. For
Okay.
or No Greater Glory. Also, I forgot yesterday, when Putin was giving his press conference, one of the things he said, they asked him about the man who was poisoned in England.
Yeah.
And, and Putin says, hey, if it had been my people, he'd be dead.
Yes. I mean, this was so sloppy. They got the spy, they got the daughter, they got 21 other people, apparently, to varying degrees of severity. Yeah, if this had been a Russian job, that spy would be dead. And only that spy would be dead.
Exactly, that's what Putin said. Yeah, he'd be dead. So, you know. But those 2 movies I really suggest to people who want to see what it's like when the communists take over a country.
Well, we're seeing communists try and take over this country right now. That's what the liberal Democrats are.
Exactly, that's why they need to see this. That's why they need to see it.
Okay.
Like in Mexico, they started shooting all the priests and whatever, and all the religious people. So, okay, thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch to Eric in Kansas. Aloha, Eric. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I sent you an email concerning the elections of 2016, and I did some analysis on them, and it is striking according to the numbers that I came up with.
Well, I'm looking for your email right now. When did you send it?
Today it says 2016 election analysis.
Got it. I'm looking at it. Yes. I did go over this, and I'm not sure that your numbers are accurate. For one thing, I think I don't see anywhere where you tried to correct for the illegal immigrant voters.
Well, what I did was I based it off of the MSN poll that I saw online today. And according to that, and according to the data that I could come up with, if that data that I saw on MSN was accurate, Hillary Clinton would have lost 16.5 million votes off her actual total.
Yeah. Okay, that's an interesting result.
And yeah, and also, according to the data that I was able to glean, if this election was, if that data was truly accurate, the election would have been thrown into the House of Representatives for the president and also the Senate for the vice president.
Okay.
According to the numbers.
Well, it's an interesting analysis, but I think in the end it just has to come on down where we need an honest, accurate, transparent, foolproof way of having our elections. And I don't agree with these electronic machines. I think we need to go back to paper ballots, and the ballots have to be kept, and we need voter ID laws, and we could do that thing they do in other countries where after you've voted, you dip your finger in this, or you spray your finger with this colored dye that takes at least a week to come off, so that you can't go back and vote again. Mm-hmm. Because we're hearing these stories about illegal immigrants who voted multiple times. They're just literally undermining what little democracy we have left.
That could be in that 16.5 million votes that Hillary Clinton could have lost.
It could very well be. We know that there's a huge number of illegal immigrants in this country. We know they tend to vote Democratic. We've had Democratic leaders openly admit that they're counting on the flood of illegal immigrants to vote Democratic and push them over the top in November, even though it is illegal for non-citizens to vote in our elections. But the Democrats don't care. They just want to win at any cost.
Yeah, my home state, unfortunately, right now is California, and I absolutely detest what's going on out there.
Yeah, it kind of breaks my heart because I used to live in California.
It does too.
Yeah,
it does too because downtown Kent cities, all up and down the Santa Ana River, Kent cities. My God, it's ridiculous. It is absolutely and utterly ridiculous.
I agree.
And it's been a one-party rule for over 30 years.
Yeah, well, we've got...
And it absolutely breaks my heart to see that.
Yep.
And California is such a beautiful state. It can be so great, but unfortunately, such is life.
Yeah, unfortunately, but I don't know what's going to happen. We've got 8,000 homeless on Oahu, and this is a small island, and they're concentrated. The police just try and keep them away from the tourists, but there's a lot of them concentrated, camped out around the center lock of Pearl Harbor. There's another batch living up in the hills above Helamano. But at some point, these people are going to start getting angry. And with so many homeless people there, that's a formidable force. You could see rioting in Los Angeles that makes the Rodney King riots look like, a polite slap in the face.
Well, a related thing to all of this is a 62.7% labor participation rate and a 4.1% unemployment rate just simply cannot exist in the same universe.
No, they can't, but it's just another way the government cooks the books. You're only considered unemployed if you've actually gone out on a job interview in the last couple of weeks. They have a separate category for people who've simply given up looking, and they're not counted. And that's how they get from such a massive number of people without jobs down to a politically acceptable unemployment rate. It's cheating, basically what it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing about it is with me, I'm going on month number 20 without a paycheck.
Oh boy, that's got to be rough. And again, all of the money in the country is being sucked out of the people's hands, and it's either going to the money junkies or the war machine or to Israel, and there's nothing left over for the American people. And if you're feeling angry, that's okay.
I'd like to know where that $21 trillion it went. I'd like to know where that $21 trillion went to that the Pentagon has missing.
Well, I'd like to know where that went either, and unless they built some super secret space-based weapon with all that money with which to win the coming war, then I'd say they basically just lost it all. And again, I think, one of the giveaways about where the money really went is the fact that on 9/11, the plane that hit the Pentagon flew around the Pentagon and came in to hit it right where the accountants were trying to figure out where that money had gone to. How very lucky for whoever got that money.
How convenient. How convenient.
Yes.
How convenient. I've known that 9/11 it was an inside job all along.
Yes.
You cannot tell me jet fuel can melt steel, structural steel beams that melt at over 2,800 degrees.
Yep.
You cannot tell me that.
No, there's a lot of reasons to suspect the official story.
The maximum temperature jet fuel will ever get in an open air fire is maybe 1,500 degrees, but most of that jet fuel was already burned off by the time it was all said and done.
Yes, most of the jet fuel burned up outside the building in those big orange fireballs.
But like we always say, the proof is always in the pudding.
Okay. All right. Well, listen.
Take care.
I hope you can find a job. I hope California starts to come to its senses, but it does seem like it's almost gone too far, and it can't turn around and come back. We're just going to have more and more illegals and more homeless until finally the whole system starts crashing down. People are going to get angry.
Just like you said, I'm already starting to see some signs of that Soviet-style collapse in this country.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that Donald Trump can ever play dead.
No, Donald Trump can't stop it, and he could very well be the last president of the United States of America as we have known it. All right, well, listen, Eric, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And again, if you are able to help, we really need it. None of us are getting rich in this game. We're doing it because we love our country and we love our fellow Americans, but we do need your support. Any support at all is going to be gratefully received. The postal address to send a check or money order, or if you want to remain anonymous, you can even send cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number to become a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 03. The network thanks you. I thank you. General will do a great deal of good. Okay, now, let's talk about the weather. Talk about human-caused global warming. The New England area is getting its fourth nor'easter in a row. And I've been in communication, email with various family members. They're well inland, so all they have to worry about is power outages. And apparently they've had a lot of those here. But we're seeing the same thing over in Europe. Extreme cold winter weather conditions, the beast from the east, and this article in the Daily Mail finally acknowledges what we've been saying. The cold winters are linked to a weak solar cycle, and experts are now saying we could be in a mini ice age by 2050. Personally, I think it's coming on a lot faster. And still the carbon Nazis are out there saying, oh, no, humans are warming the world. You know, the global warming gives us cold weather. Apparently, California is about to get some major weather. They're calling it an atmospheric river, which is a jet stream just full of moisture. And probably a contributing factor is they found that warm zone on the floor of the Pacific Ocean, off the Pacific Northwest. Most likely it's an undersea volcano, and it's heating the water, and the water evaporates more quickly, gets into the jet stream, and gets blown on shore. So they're expecting heavy flooding and debris flows in Southern California as a result of this coming storm. I remember when I lived in Los Angeles, there were the spring thunderstorms, and then there were the fall thunderstorms, and they were intense. These are probably going to be a lot worse. Now, On March 13th, they had one of these blizzards. It dumped 2 feet of snow in eastern Massachusetts. Now, getting on back to Europe and the beast from the east, they're calling it European Superfreeze 2.0. Netherlands breaking all-time temperature records. UK snow warnings bringing the country to a partial standstill. 6-inch snow in London. Beaches near Venice are covered in snow. Sahara dust blows and covers Greek ski resorts, and that front is on to Spain and Morocco next for record showers in March. All courtesy of the grand solar minimum intensifying. That's what's really going on here. So the next obvious question is, how do you explain to friends and family about the grand solar minimum and how it and not human activity is what drives the temperature here on Earth? Well, most people, if they were paying attention in high school science class, they know about the 11-year sunspot cycle and the 22-year magnetic cycle. But because we've only been able to scientifically study the sun for about 100 years, we're just now starting to see evidence of other cycles. And Russian astronomers in particular are saying there is a 60-year cycle. And beyond that, there's one that's a little more than twice as long, 130 some odd years. And what's going on is all of these cycles are hitting the low energy point at the same time. They're lining up. And so the sun's energy is diminished. And that means our planet cools. And we're going to see reduced crop yields because of shorter growing seasons. Now, we got through the last mini ice age. In fact, they used to have the winter fair in London, where the ice on the Thames was so solid, they could set up little shops, little huts, and they had the winter fairs. That may come on back here. Now, a federal appeals court on Wednesday has rejected the U.S. government's bid to halt a lawsuit by children. It's for the children, claiming that President Donald Trump and his administration are violating their constitutional rights by ignoring the harms caused by climate change. Well, the climate is changing. We're going into a new Maunder minimum and a new little ice age. Before they said the world was warming and it was all our fault. That was obvious nonsense. But I've read that Constitution, and there's nothing in there about a constitutional right to be protected from climate change. And I imagine this federal appeals court judge is a liberal, because the fact of the matter is that it's just impossible to have any impact on climate that is significant. Every time a scientist has said there's human impact on the environment, it's always been in very tiny numbers compared to things like cosmic rays and solar radiation. We'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. A little bit of common sense breaking out over in Michigan. Their governor, Rick Snyder, has just signed a bill into law that bans all material support or resources for warrantless federal surveillance programs. And the new law effectively prohibits state cooperation with agencies like the NSA when they engage in warrantless spying. Now, I'm sure the NSA is going to pick up a kerfuffle about this, and they're going to say, you've got to comply with U.S. federal law, just like with immigration. But there's a difference here, and that is that the warrantless surveillance is explicitly banned by the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And so in this case, Governor Rick Snyder is right, and the federal government is absolutely in the wrong here. Now, the other day we were talking about how medicine has gone from being about medicine and curing and health and has become corrupted by the money. And apparently, there was this doctor, Gerald Rosenberg, and he apparently got 4 years in prison over this historic opioid trial, where basically he was accepting money from the company that made this opioid, Insys. It was all delivered supposedly as speaking fees. But apparently this is a powerful fentanyl-based cancer spray, And apparently, Gerald Rosenberg had been falsely diagnosing patients with cancer in order to get insurance approval for prescribing the drug, which is called Subsys. Now, in addition to his jail time, Rosenberg is ordered to pay $754,000 in restitution to his victims. And this guy is not alone. Reuters is reporting federal prosecutors in Boston have accused 7 former executives and managers at Insys, including billionaire founder John Kapoor, of participating in a scheme to bribe doctors to prescribe Subsys and to defraud insurers into paying for it. Now, behind all that, you have to look at the people who actually became addicted to this stuff and how hard it's going to be for them to get off it. Now, here's an interesting little story. This came out of Government Slaves. Remember, over the years, I've been talking about the gallery of fake dead bin Ladens, pointing out the very obvious signs of artifice in all those pictures that followed Abbottabad. Well, a former Navy SEAL has come on out and took part in the raid of Abbottabad. And he's come on out saying that, yeah, the photos of Osama's dead body are fake. The real Osama was in such a terrible condition, we didn't want to show that. And that's why all the photos were fake. Well, he's still trying to say, trust us, it really was the real Osama bin Laden, even though we faked all the pictures. But we figured out they were fake early on. We know that the real Osama died of natural causes in late 2001. They're just trying to polish the lie a little bit more. Now, as you know, we've been talking about the Tiangong-1 Chinese space station that's gone out of control, and everybody's watching it. They're trying to track it and figure out exactly what's going to happen. The current predicted entry is April 2nd, plus or minus 2 days. And the orbital bands that it's passing through are starting to narrow. So already there are large sections of the Earth where we know it's not going to hit. And right now, the current predicted impact point is going to be somewhere in the jungles of South America. But again, with the plus or minus 2 days, it's really hard to know. Could come down anywhere. Hope it comes down in the ocean, obviously. But they're keeping an eye on that, and I'm going to be keeping watch on the updated predictions, because here in Hawaii we are not quite out from underneath a possible impact. Now, apparently the Kepler Space Telescope is going to run out of its fuel within several months, and so NASA is going to launch a new spacecraft on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. So they're sending that up there to basically take over for Kepler. Now, here's an interesting story out of the political correctness area. Apparently, over in Great Britain at a South London pool, the pools are segregated by gender. And obviously the dressing rooms as well. Well, apparently there was a big stink because the pool management was allowing men who said they identified as women to use the women's dressing room and the women's pool. So a group of British women, actually 2, went to the pool and said, we identify as men, we want to use the men's pool. And the pool officials had to let them do that, so they walked through the men's dressing room, apparently caused quite a stir, and they went swimming in swim trunks only to be just like the men. And they're trying to make the point, this whole self-identify thing, it really is utterly ridiculous. You can self-identify as anything you want. It doesn't change what you are. Apparently, Caitlyn Jenner is having gender regret and may go back to being a guy. Hope they kept the spare bits locked in a freezer somewhere. Apparently, on March 21st, the ISS Expedition 56 will get underway, and it will be 3 new crew members. NASA flight engineers Ricky Arnold and Drew Fustel, along with Oleg Artemyev of the Russian space agency Roscosmos, who will join the Expedition 55 crew members already in space. And they're going by Soyuz, so we're still at least cooperating with Russia on that regard. So we don't hate everything about Russia. We certainly do love their natural gas. There's no question about that. Okay. There's been an interesting story. This has to do with Republican lobbyist Jack Berkman, who has been conducting his own investigation into just how former DNC staffer Seth Rich died or was killed. And he's already been subject to one attack. Last January, somebody pepper sprayed him in his home. But this Kevin Doherty, he's a former Marine, claims to have worked as a special agent with the Department of Energy. He's been charged with shooting and running over Jack Berkman. And apparently, Berkman, this all happened at the Rosslyn Marriott Hotel's parking garage. Berkman was there to retrieve what he thought were documents from the FBI whistleblower, and he was set up and assaulted by this guy. But they arrested the Marine. He's been charged. This is the second attempt on Jack Berkman's life. So I think at this point, it should be obvious somebody has some concern about what happened to Seth Rich, that it wasn't just a botched robbery, that in point of fact he was silenced, that he was in fact the leak from inside the DNC to WikiLeaks, and Russia had nothing to do with it. Frankly, I'm getting very tired of hearing about all this Russia bashing. It's really tiring. Anyway, somebody sent me an email correcting one of our callers. The nuns who were killed were not killed in Mexico. They were killed in El Salvador as part of that U.S.-backed coup d'etat. And I wondered at the time if that's what he was talking about. So, anyway. The U.S. economy is only growing because of deficit spending. Let's get some callers in here for the rest of the show. 800-313-9443. Apparently, Google is now pouring a lot of money behind news publishers. And let's see. North Miami Beach cops are apparently after a wayward monkey that invaded one of the strip clubs up there. Okay, Trump is going to unleash $60 billion in China tariffs on Friday. And I think China is going to retaliate, and things are going to get very, very odd. Hillary Clinton, of course, is back in the news. She's out there trying to recover from, once again, insulting people who voted for Donald Trump. Apparently, she did seriously hurt her wrist. So she's fallen and she won't shut up. That's all I can say here. Alrighty. Do we have any calls yet? No, none whatsoever. Interestingly enough, if you are a fan of Sex and the City, apparently one of the actresses from the show, actress Cynthia Nixon, is challenging Cuomo for the governorship of New York. So that's going to be rather interesting to see what happens with that one. And here we go. I ran out of things on the talking points list. That's why I'm scrambling around trying to find things. All right. Story coming out of Lisa Disu blogspot. Apparently, the delete Facebook movement gains steam after 50 million users have their data leaked. We already talked about that. I definitely think it's time to get off these corporate social media platforms. They're not really providing a service to us. They're harvesting our data. They're just selling it left and right. Zuckerberg's greed got the better of him. And he turned Facebook from what it originally was, a true social media platform that had the potential to make the world better, into just another money-grubbing, greedy commercial operation. And the data breach on this side, I think there should be a class action lawsuit by everybody who's a Facebook member for the violation of their privacy. We know that there have been other class action lawsuits against data companies for losing their data, for having it hacked and leaked. And I think we ought to consider the same thing here. Meanwhile, we've got to start supporting those small alternative social media companies that are just starting up, that do have respect for freedom and privacy. And of course, we're talking about, pardon me, Scene Life, Gab, VK, Yandex, DuckDuckGo, and there's a whole another group of these companies. Just they're seizing the opportunity. They're seizing the opportunity, and they're going into business, and they're doing very, very well. All right. No callers yet. Reminds me of an old Bob Newhart comedy thing where he's doing talk radio and nobody's calling into the show, and he starts saying more and more, there we have a call. It says, dead burnt babies, I'm for them. Anyway, Andrea in Oklahoma, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes. I've been hearing this I've seen it on the internet, and now I'm starting to hear it on the radio, and it sounds like one of those things where you say it's too good to be true, but I thought you might look at it.
Okay.
It's called Freedom Checks.
Okay.
Freedom Checks. And it's supposed to pay out $26,000, $136,000, and you have until April 1st to get in on it, and you only have to send in $49. Of course, I don't want all the paperwork, of course, and I'm still unemployed, but I thought maybe you could check into it and see if you thought it sounded like a scam. I know it sounds like a scam, but they're claiming it's real, and it's all about metals, the investment in metals, and it's really going to pay big. But it's like, well, what does that mean? Are they selling our country off, and this is the big payout for those who are paying attention and just happen to get in on it? Or is this like a big rip-off thing?
I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at it right now, and it does look too good to be true. I have to be very honest. It looks like it could potentially be a Ponzi scheme. But let's see. Yeah, this doesn't pass the smell test. It smells like tulips. I'll take another look into it after the show today. But yeah, anything that looks too good to be true usually is.
Yeah, but if it just is, and it is all about metals and everything, like I said, with this uranium deal, and they're selling off all these bits and parts or forests to different countries, maybe only to those select few that get in on it. It's like, well, that would be horrible. But anyway, it sounded like a really good, this guy, it sounds really good when you watch the video. And then I went out to find out if it's a scam, and he's there going, no, this is an investment, and it's not a scam. So anyway, thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you, and I will take a good look at it. But right now, looking at the numbers they're presenting about how much you pay in versus how much you get back, it just doesn't look real. It just does not look real. All right.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye. We're going to switch over to Jeff in Georgia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Michael, good to talk to you. I always call about the need to overthrow the banking cartel, and here's a reason why. We have to raise the red flag about these limitations on free speech. Free speech has evolved over the lifetime of Western civilization. Socrates promoted free speech over 2,000 years ago. It didn't happen in his lifetime. Free speech was given in the British Parliament, 1689, just to the Parliament members. The French Revolution gave free speech to all people. The American Revolution gave free speech to all citizens. Okay, if you look at the birth of communism and its progression, then you see the limitation of free speech in this communist Soviet Union, China, communist dictatorships like Cuba. The rulers in Western civilization today are nothing but they're Zionist Christian rulers like Theresa May, Macron in France, Merkel.
Yep. And we're seeing
free speech is not given right. Yeah.
Yeah, well, freedom of speech is definitely under attack in this country. They want to start with the so-called Palestinian exception. Anyway, Jeff, going to have to let you go. Got a commercial break. Got one more segment in our show and time for one more phone call. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of the program. We've got 2 phone calls. I'm going to try and fit them both in. Francis in North Carolina. Aloha, Francis. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, aloha to you both. Now, I'm trying to make this short, sweet, and quick because I had 2 quick points for you. One, you mentioned something about a monkey invading a nightclub or something. Apparently, that monkey decided that they didn't know how to monkey around. But I'm bummed.
Okay.
Now, speaking of monkeys, yeah, really. But it was cute. Now, as for the monkeying around, yes, I heard about that, the one call about the American Freedom Checks and so forth. It sounds like a brand spanking new scenario to get tied up with and so forth, which really sounds great. You're going to get a check of money or whatever. But you know something? After I heard the whole spew about it and then heard about the date you had to have it done by, I thought, okay, great. A red light went off in my head because it sounds like another pyramid scheme. April 1st, April Fools. Yep. I would have saw that with what?
I agree.
I mean, if you want to be in a pond and get hooked by a hook and a sinker, that's one way to do it without even getting in the water. Later.
All right, later, and we're going to switch over to David in California. Aloha, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. 2 things real quick. There's a car called the Rivero. Have you heard about that?
Nope.
It's a hybrid, and it's $130,000, and I can't remember who makes it, and I'm not sure if it's spelled the same way, but that's what they call it.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that according to AP, the San Antonio police chief denied that there was a second bomb.
Well, that was they were certainly carrying that on Fox, and they said it was an unexploded bomb.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, see, that the same scenario I had yesterday, only different. Nope, that's what I heard on AP. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what AP said. So I'll leave it at that and have a nice one.
Well, it may turn out that there was a package that thought might be a bomb, and when the bomb squad got it open, they realized, no, it wasn't, and that may be the explanation for the confusion. I sure hope they catch the guy. It can be absolutely terrifying just see this kind of stuff happening around you. I remember when I was a kid, there was one summer we had a firebug around our part of the state. We liked burning down barns. Today we call them arsonists. Back then it was a firebug. And I don't remember if they ever actually got the guy or he just went away. But I do remember just picking up on the state of fear of members of our family, especially those that actually did have barns. And so, yeah, it can be very scary. Now, so far, it looks like this bomber individual may have a racial motive based on the ethnicity of the target so far. But obviously, if you are anywhere around Texas, Austin, San Antonio is where the FedEx one went off, you've got to be very, very, very careful about packages. In fact, if you receive a package and you don't recognize the return address, it might be time to call the police. That's all I can say about that. All right, so there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Please stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots and lots of useful things for you to hear. Please take everything that you learn here, share them with everybody, email, face-to-face, keep RBN alive, tell 5, have them tell 5, keep it going like this. We're in a fight for the truth against the liars. We've got to win this one. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.